As North Carolina moved through the rest of the 20th century, new situations required new ways of providing electricity throughout the state. In 1935, all the cities and towns in North Carolina had electricity, while only 3.5% of the farms did. To help get power to rural areas, the people who lived there were allowed to form nonprofit electric co-ops. At the same time, the private power companies began to merge. By the 50s and 60s, there were three types of power providers competing for customers in North Carolina. A few large private power companies, the rural co-ops, and a number of small public power towns. To avoid duplication of services, territories were assigned to the different providers, and it was during this time that the towns formed a statewide organization to give public power a unified voice. Things worked pretty well, until the energy shortages of the 1970s. Public power departments were now buying virtually all of their power from private power companies, and they were feeling the brunt of the shortages.
The bills basically kept going up, 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 and up.
The cities fought for cheap power, and Duke, of course, being an investor-owned utility, wanted to maximize its profits. Secondly, it was thought at that time that we wouldn't be able to keep up with the demand for power. Nuclear power was thought commonly to be the answer, but those were expensive facilities to build. Produces cheap electricity, but very costly to build.
After years of fighting over rate increases, a solution began to be apparent. The private power companies wanted to build nuclear plants, but they were not in a financial position to raise the money themselves. The public power towns needed a reliable, inexpensive source of power, and they had the ability to issue bonds and raise the money needed to build the plants. If the towns helped pay for the plants, they would own a portion of those plants and would be able to better control the cost of the electricity they received.
We were convinced and took all the evidence that was presented to us that the only way to really preserve power at a rate that citizens could afford was to join up with the power companies in building these nuclear plants, and the evidence all supported that.
Two power agencies were formed, the North Carolina Eastern Municipal Power Agency in the east and North Carolina Municipal Power Agency No. 1 in the west. 29 cities chose to remain independent, but 51 other public power towns joined these agencies, and together they agreed to partner with Duke Power and CP&L to have joint ownership of several nuclear and coal power plants.
That was a great idea, and the projections were wonderful, and the cost of nuclear power at the time was very reasonable. And then all of a sudden, 3 Mile Island comes about, and the cost of building nuclear power plants goes up almost tenfold. So then the cost was just absolutely astronomical, and the cities that joined into this power agency got locked into very high cost, and interest rates were extremely high, and all of it together just put the towns in a bad situation. But at the time, they acted on good faith because the public was demanding it.
I think if I had to do it again, I would vote to do it again. But with the evidence now, hindsight is a little bit better. I mean, we did not know about the cost overruns that were going to occur, so we got stuck with a large bill. But I think one thing that's encouraging, the cities have continued to make their payments on their debt. They're getting out of debt, and I think there's a bright future ahead.
And we'll continue to pay down the debt, and North Carolina will be very happy that 51 cities actually did invest with bonds to buy into these nuclear power plants, because we're going to need it.
The cities involved faced this crisis with the same determination they had when they started providing electricity, and with the same focus, serving their citizens. They have worked hard to help keep costs to their customers down by helping their customers find ways to cut their energy consumption, by refinancing their debt at lower interest rates, and, when possible, by not passing on wholesale rate increases. All of the public power towns have worked to keep their service second to none, and they have found it really helps to have a statewide organization. By joining together, they are able to help one another to provide services like training and emergency backup.
We celebrated our 100th year in 1989, and we had a little present that year in the form of Hurricane Hugo.
At one time, we had zip. Everything was down. Not one light bulb burning.
It was just tremendous, the response. We had guys here from the city of High Point, I think Gastonia, Greenville, just all over. These are other municipalities that are in the electric business. And we couldn't have done it without them.
I think it took about 8 days and nights of hard work to get it back on.
We almost totally rebuilt our system in a week. And I think it made people appreciate the fact that they did live in a public power community, and they did get the kind of response and the personal attention that they needed during a time like that.
You had Hurricane Fran and Hurricane Floyd, where in both cases our system was totally interrupted, and partial restoration took place within hours and total restoration within only a few days, whereas some of the larger utilities, the investor-owned utilities, were literally weeks getting all their customers back on.
We probably have a better capability of dealing with disasters because of the large number of cities in North Carolina that have their own power systems. And the great thing about that is that because it stretches all the way across North Carolina, it's unlikely that a natural disaster wipes out everything all across North Carolina. So there's always some available crews out there. And that's a great feeling